Welcome to our new class of Python for mobile application development. In this class, I'm going to be showing you how you're going to create an expense tracker app just by using Python. Now, I'm going to divide and I'm going to structurize this class in such a way so that I can design the UI for adding the expenses. I can store data using SQLite. I can display expenses in graphs using Matplotlib, Kivy, or even charts. And I'm going to also export data to CSV using Python in PyCharm with step-by-step method. Now, there are a couple of things that we need to know. So first things first, let's open up PyCharm on our device and let's get started with programming. So as you can see from my screen, I have opened up PyCharm. Now, there are a couple of things that you need to know before you get into more of the practical part, such as the UI for adding the expenses. For creating the UI in this specific application, we're going to be using Tkinter. For storing the data, we're going to be using SQLite. To display the expenses in graphs, we're going to use Matplotlib. And to export data into CSV, we're going to use specific functions to let that functionality to, like, let's say, merge in with this whole application. So the first thing that you need to do is to install the necessary Python libraries. Now, I already have the necessary libraries updated. So what you can do is either you can click on interpreter settings, and from here, you have to make sure that you have Flask, the Django, and you also need to have, like, let's say, Matplotlib and Pandas. If you go into this section, and if you find out Matplotlib is already over there, then it means that you can, like, basically you are just good to go. But if you do not have Matplotlib, neither Pandas, as you can see, we have Matplotlib, and we also going to have Pandas. If you don't have those, then what you have to do is just follow this specific simple command. As you can see, I already installed it, but what you can do is your terminal might look like this. And from here, you just want to type in pip install matplotlib. And then what you want to do is install pandas. This is what you want to type in. And if you hit on enter, well, it's already showing me that requirement is already satisfied. That means I already have it downloaded. But if you do not have it downloaded, it's going to download a couple of files. It's going to collect a lot of resources, and then it's going to show you that it has been successfully installed. So that is basically how simple it is. And basically, you're just good to go with programming. Now, let's get into creating the UI for adding the expenses. So let's cut off this terminal and click on VENV first. Right click on this. I'm going to create a new directory. In this new directory, I'm going to create a new file. So right click on this again and click on directory. Now here, I'm going to name this expense tracker. That is going to be the name of this folder. Right click on this and I'm going to click on new again with the Python file. Now, if it doesn't show up, just click on this again and basically it will show up. I'm going to name it add expense. Okay. So another thing is that as we're going to use only the UI, or let's say the user interface, we're only going to need one of these Python files, which is going to make it a lot more easier. But it's going to be a really big file, okay, which is going to have a lot of code structures as we're going to be using a couple of Python libraries. First things first, we want to import Tkinter as TK. The next thing is obviously Tkinter to import the message box. So I'm going to type in from Tkinter. I'm going to import message box. The next thing that we need is import SQLite 3. The next thing is import CSV. And the next one is obviously going to be pandas. Import pandas as PD. And I'm going to import matplotlib.pyplot. There we go. As PLT. So we have imported all of the necessary libraries into our, let's say, code structure. Now, the next thing that we need is basically, first off, is the database setup. Now, when you are defining your database setup, it should start off with the cursor, and then it's going to have a specific execution, or let's say a specific command. Now, you're not going to type in command because everything is going to get inside of the execute. Now, let me show you how. So as this is the database setup, now in database, you're also going to be using SQLite tree, and then you are going to connect it with the database. So in that case, we're going to type in con equal SQLite tree dot connect. Now, after connect, open up the parentheses. Inside the double quotation, you have to make sure that everything is connecting with the database, such as expense.db. Now, when you define it like that, after you run the whole application and add in more data from your UI, it's going to create another file inside of your directory, such as this ExpenseTracker folder. So let's say after con, we're going to add in cursor. Cursor, it's going to be equal to on.cursor. This is how you want to type in. Keep the parentheses open. In the next one, I'm going to apply the execution code. Execute. Now, inside this parentheses, I'm going to start off with 3 single quotations first. 1, 2, 3. This is how you want to keep it. And I'm going to make sure that this one is connecting up to this part. Okay, this is how simple this is. Okay, so first things first, let's get into, let's say, this indentation level. I'm going to type in create table if not exists expenses. After that, open up another parentheses. I'm going to type in ID integer value, which is going to be a primary key auto increment. This is how you want to type it. Put in a comma, move into the next line. Name is going to be text. After that, put in a comma, move into the next line. Amount real. After that, comma, move into the next line. Category is going to be text. Now, after this one, you want to just close it off with the closed parentheses. And what you can also do is you can make sure that it is a bit on the inside, or it is in the same indentation level as create. Another thing that you can type doing in is make sure that the indentation level is a bit inside and close to this. So it's going to make sure that it's going to differentiate all of the values. Now, as we have the execution codes and executive values, what we can do next is obviously we can just make sure that it commits. So con.commit. There we go. This is how you want to type it in. Now, the next thing that we want to do is the next section is basically we're going to create a function to add in the expenses. Now, when we are working with functions, you have to do, or you have to type in def. So def add expense, open parentheses, colon, move into the next line. Here, let's define the name is equal to entry name dot get, open parentheses, next line. Here it's going to be the amount is going to be equal to, let's say, entry underscore amount dot get, open parentheses. Here I'm going to put in category. There we go. Is equal to entry underscore category, and then put in dot get. Now we're done with this section. So let's move on and put in our functions of the name. Start off with the if function, if name and amount and category. So it's going to define all of these values in one line. You can see if and like if and is the function in this line. So first off, we need the cursor to execute the command. So here we're going to define it cursor dot execute. Inside this, put in double quotation. I'm going to put in insert into expenses. Open up the parentheses. Here I'm going to define in with name, comma, amount, comma, and then you're going to put in the category. This is how you want to type in. Close off the parentheses. After that, we need a specific value. And the value is also going to be, let's say, question. Then put in comma after each of them. Question, comma, question, comma, question. Because we did not apply any values yet. So you can either keep it empty or you can put in questions. So it's going to be empty in certain cases. Now, after this parentheses closes, you are going to make sure that you're going to put in another comma so that you can define those values again, such as name, amount, and category. There we go. This is how you want to keep it. And then you want to close off the parentheses on this line. Move on to the next line, and you have to make sure that after every execute, you have to make sure it commits. So con dot commit. There we go. And keep it empty. Now we need a specific message box to show the info. So here I'm going to put in message box dot show info. As you can see, now after show info, you need to show that a specific text, such as success. After that, put in a comma, double quotation again. I'm going to put in expense added successfully. Okay. Now, after that, I'm going to move on to the next section. Here, we're going to apply the entry value, the amount value, and let's say the category value. And we're going to make sure that every base value has been added. So when you work with base value, you have to make sure that every one of these values or variables are typed in with dot delete. So here, I'm going to put in entry underscore name, entry underscore amount, entry underscore category. Now, after each of them, you just have to make sure that you put in dot delete, dot delete, dot delete. This is how you want to type in. And after delete, open up the parentheses, 0, comma, tk dot end. This is how you want to type it in. Now, put the same thing on each and every one of these. There we go. And we're done with this. Now, as we have put in this function, which is everything is working inside of this if function. So now we can go on to the next section and define our else function. So type in else, colon, move to the next line. Here, we're going to put in the message box. Now, after message box, you want to show us a specific warning. Inside this, you want to put in the error, such as input error. After that, comma, double quotation again. I'm going to type in, please, let's say, fill all fields. Okay, that is what I want to type it in. Now, if we move on to the next section, now we have to define the function to export the data to CSV. So let's make sure that we're in the first indentation level. Here, I'm going to put in or start off with def. Export to CSV. Okay, this is how you want to type in parentheses and colon at the end. Here, start off with cursor dot execute. Inside the execute, we have to make sure that it selects from the expenses. So here, I'm going to type in select. After this, now, instead of making sure that you put in another double quotation, you just have to make sure you put in an asterisk function. I'm going to type in from expenses. Okay, This is how you want to type it in. Move on to the next section, and then you have to define the data value. And the data value should be like, gotten or fetched from the cursor. So here I'm going to put in cursor dot fetch file or fetch all. Okay, this is how you want to type it in. Now, with the use of expense.csv, or you have to make sure that it opens with a specific file or as a database file. So to do that, I'm going to type in with open up the parentheses, and here you want to type in like double quotation. Here I'm going to type in expenses, let's say expenses.csv. So it saves up with the CSV file. After this double quotation, put in a comma, and after that, you want to type in double quotation with a W. After W, you want to also put in another comma, and then you have to put in the new line value. So after new line, you have to make sure that you put in just a double quotation and make sure it is empty. So it's going to save up as new files as you want it to be. So you have to define the file right over here at the end. Now, here, as we're working with CSV, new line, and as a file, we have to make sure we use the function called writer. So here I'm going to put in writer is going to be equal to csv.writer file. So writer, and inside of this, you just have to define in file. After writer, we have to work with writer OW and writer rows. Okay, so here I'm going to put in writer dot write rows. There we go. We have write row. Here I'm going to put in double quotation with the secondary bracket, double quotation, start off with the specific ID, and inside or after the quotation after ID, you have to define in the name. After name, we have to put in the specific amount in the same way. And after amount, we have to put in the category. So after the category, we have to make sure that we have to put in the rows. Okay, so here put in writer dot write rows. Inside this write rows, we have to make sure that everything connects into data. So let's move on to the next section. Make sure you are in the indentation level with the width. Now, after this indentation level, you have to make sure to apply in the message box. So type in message box dot show info. Now, double quotation, here I'm going to put in successful. Okay. Now, as we have successful, or you can put in success if you want to, put in a comma, double quotation again. Here I'm going to put in data exported to expenses.csv. Now, after CSV, I'm going to move on to the next section. And here we're going to create another section for creating the functions to display expenses in a specific graph. Now, this is going to be almost the last section where we're going to be creating or structurizing the functions of, the buttons. So start off with the definition function again, def. Here, I'm going to put in show graph, show underscore, and put in graph. Now, after graph, open up the parentheses with the colon at the end. Here, I'm going to put in cursor dot execute. Inside of execute, double quotation, make sure to put in select category. There we go. After category, I'm going to put in comma. I'm going to put in the sum, open parentheses. I'm going to put in the amount value. Close off the parentheses. I'm going to put in from expenses group by category. Okay, so we have specific categories to define right now, and then we're going to make sure that it falls into the database, such as cursor.fetchAll. There we go, and we're going to keep it empty. Now, if we go off to the next part, we basically have to put in the if function, which is going to work with the data. So data, move into the next line, and we're going to define the categories and also the amounts. So here, as we work with category, instead of put in like parentheses, we have to make sure to put in equal and then put in the secondary brackets. Here we're going to define in the row. Secondary bracket again, and define in the first value or the base value, which is going to work with 0. And after that, I'm going to put in for row in data. Okay, and moving to the next line. Here I'm going to define in the specific amounts equal secondary brackets, put in row, secondary brackets 1. Okay, so that is the base value. Now after this, you have to make sure that you put in equal for row in data. Okay, so after the data value, we have to make sure that each and every one of these datas, when it is entered into the application, it shows up a specific graph. Now to put up that specific graph and to present it in a visual form, we have to use matplotlib. So as we used matplotlib and imported that specific library, and the short function is going to be plt. So here we're going to type in plt. Now another thing is that you can see after each and every one of these, we are using like as plt. We can also change this function, and this is how basically function works, or let's say Python works. We can also keep it plot. And when we define it as plot, whenever we want to use matplotlib pyplot, we have to use this exact command. We don't have to type in all of the things, okay? So plt is basically one of those universal commands or universal way of keeping it in a short form. So we're going to use plt. So plt dot figure. Okay, so whenever you are using figure, you have to put in the fixed size. So you show the exact size of how you want it to be visible inside of your screen. So fixed size, as you can see, it should be equal to a specific value, such as I'm going to start off with 6, 4. This is how I want it to be. And you want to make sure you close off all of the parentheses. Another thing is that I'm going to make sure you have another parentheses over here, and you have to close off another parentheses right at the end. So this is how it should look like. Now we're going to make sure that what type of category or what type of chart do you want. So obviously, if you worked with chart in Excel or even in other softwares like spreadsheets, there are a couple of different type of categories of chart, such as there is pie chart, there is bar chart, there is, let's say, histogram, and even a lot of those methods. But here, to keep it simple, I'm going to use a specific bar chart. So for bar chart, we're going to be using this bar over here, plt.bar. Open up the parentheses, and then we're going to define the categories. So I'm going to put in categories. After that, put in a comma, define in the specific amounts, comma, and define in the specific color that we want to use. It's going to be equal to secondary brackets, double quotation. Let's say the first one should obviously be blue. If we put it in, the next color that we want to use is going to be green in this case. And the next color that we want to put in is going to be red. And the next color that we want to put it in is going to be orange. Okay, so this is how you want to type it in, and then you can move on to the next line. Now we're going to define it with the X and Y axis. So put in plt.xLabel. So this is going to define the X label, and on the X label, we should say, or we're going to define the categories. On the y-axis, I'm going to put in plt.ylabel, open up the parentheses. Here, it's going to be the amount spent. On the next line, we're going to have the whole title. So here, I'm going to put in plt.title. Okay, so as we have the title, we're going to make sure to open up the parentheses and define in expense distributor. Okay. Or you can also put in as like expend distribution. This is how you want to keep it in. Now I'm going to make sure to show up and present all of these expenses or all of these values inside of the chart. So if you want to show it, you just have to type in plt.show and keep it empty. You don't have to type in anything inside of this parentheses because every one of those values is going to be fetched from the data when the user types it in. So after that, you have to make sure you get into the same indentation level as the if and type in the else function. After else, we're going to type in the message box, and after that, we're going to show the specific info, such as no data. Now, this is only going to show if there is a specific error. Put in comma, double quotation. So I'm going to type in no expenses to display. So if you try typing in or try visualizing the data without even typing or without even entering the specific values, the category, and the amount, it's not going to show anything, right? So this is how it is going to be. Now let's get into the last section where we're going to define our UI setup. So to define our UI setup, it is basically very simple. It's basically we're going to work with Tkinter UI. Okay. So first off, you have to define it with the root value. So root is basically tk.tk. This is how it is. Now after tk, you have to make sure to open up the parentheses and keep it empty. Now we're going to have a specific root title. As you can see, open up parentheses, double quotation. I'm going to type in expense tracker. After expense tracker, I'm going to have a specific root dot geometry. There we go. Open parentheses. Now it's going to define how big the size of, let's say the chart or let's say the application is going to be. So let's say I'm going to keep it 400 x. Let's say I'm going to put in 350. This is how you want to type it in. And you have to make sure you put in double quotation on all sides. Okay, this is how it's going to look like. Now let's move on to the next line. Here I'm going to put in a TK label. So put in tk.label. After that, open up the parentheses and define in the root, comma, text. Now the exact text is going to be, let's say, the expense name. So here I'm going to put in expense name. After that, put in a colon and keep it empty. After that, you're going to define a specific pack to it and keep this empty. And then we're going to have the entry underscore name. And the name is going to be equal to tk.entry root. Entry, open parentheses, and define in the root value. Next line, here I'm going to have the entry name again, and we're going to define the pack value and keep it empty. If you want to apply in a padding value, you can also put in a padding or patty value. That's how simple it is. Now let's put in another TK label, and this label is going to define the specific amount. Open the parentheses. In the same way, put in root, comma, text is going to be equal, double quotation, amount, colon, move into the next line. And after that, put in the packed value, open up the parentheses. I'm going to put in entry name, but instead of entry name, we have to put in amount as we're working with amount on this section. So put in entry amount is going to be equal to tk dot, let's say put in the entry, open up the root with the parentheses, and then I'm going to put in entry amount dot pack and open up the parentheses. In the same way, we're going to do the same thing for our category. So tk dot label, open parentheses, root value, comma, text is going to be equal, double quotation, category. Here, I'm going to put in dot pack, open parentheses, entry, category over here, equal, tk, it's going to be open parentheses or entry over here, open parentheses, and then the root value. After the root value, we just have to type in the entry category dot pack and open up the parentheses. So basically, it's the same on each and every line. Now, as we're done with defining our TK with specific labels, and the last thing that remains is the command and also defining the buttons. So here, I'm going to put in TK button, open up the parentheses, put in the root value, comma, text is going to be equal to double quotation. Here, we're going to type in add expense. After that, I'm going to put in a specific command, which is going to be equal to add expense. Let's put in underscore. There we go. Now you can keep an open parentheses, but I would prefer not to. And after this whole parentheses ends, you just have to type in the pack value. Let's move into the next line and do the same thing for each and every one of these. So here I'm going to put in TK dot button, open up the parentheses, define in the root value, comma, text is equal to double quotation. Let's say I'm going to put in show graph. After this, put in comma, command is going to be equal. This is going to be, let's say, show graph dot pack. After this one, we're going to have the last button, TK dot button, open parentheses. Here it's going to be specific root value, comma, the text is going to be equal, double quotation. Let's say I'm going to type in export to CSV. This is how you want to type it in, comma, and then put in command equal export to CSV, keep it empty, and then put in dot pack and open up the parentheses and keep it empty. So basically we're done with this. Now we just want to type in the root dot main loop and we're done with the whole commanding section. Now, if you want to run it, you have to make sure to save up this file first. And then first off, you want to try running this whole application together. Now, if it might show you off with a couple of error like auto increment. So we're going to check it out which line it is from. So it is line 4. So we're going to check it out where it is. We have auto. There we go. We have auto increment over here. We have specific lines over here. There we go. We have the specific text. We want to save up this file and we want to run it. Now you can see we have the application running. Now, if it doesn't work or if there is a couple of errors that you're facing at the first or at the beginning, you want to make sure that you debug the whole application first, and then you can try running it and then it will start running perfectly. Now let's try checking it out if there is any specific error. Now, even if you face any error after this, you want to make sure that you just, type it in, or you have to debug the whole application first. So let's type in our expense name. Let's say in this case, we're going to have food. The amount is going to be, let's say, around $20. And the category is obviously necessary. Now, if I click on add expense, you can see entry category is not defined. So you can see, did you mean entry category? We have to check the specific line in line 25. Let's go off the line 25. Here I'm going to cut this off and you want to rerun this application. Now here, I'm going to type in the name again, food. The amount is $20. The category is around, obviously necessary. Type in add expense. You can see expense added successfully. Now, if I press on OK, it closes off. Now, if I run this back again, I'm going to stop and rerun. You can see this is how it looks like. So let's try this again over here. Food, $20. Category is necessary. Let's click on add expense, press on OK. Now, if I click on show graph, you can see there is also a couple of errors right over here. No such error as category. Okay, so we have this category over here in specific lines. In this 49, we have show graph. So here I'm going to go off to line 49. Let's go off over here. There we go. We want to rerun. Food, amount 20. Here I'm going to put in NEC, add expense, show graph, and you can see we have specific lines, is not defined, you mean category. Okay, we have to also define it like category. So one thing that we can try doing is we can debug the whole thing so that it fixes up all of the problems. Now let's try rerunning the whole thing. Let's rerun it. There we go. Now here I'm going to do the same thing, food. The amount is $20 and the category is going to be necessary. So I'm going to click on add expense. And if I click on show graph, this is how it should look like. Now you might think that how or why is it looking like this? Now, if I put in more of these values, let's say next one is going to be travel. And the specific amount that we want to put in is going to be, let's say, somewhere around $100. And the category is obviously travel. I'm going to click on add expense. I'm going to click on show graph. And you can see this has been updated. Now we can also apply in more. We can apply up to 4 of these values. The next expense name is going to be, let's say rent. And the amount is basically going to be, let's say, in this case, we're going to put in $200. This is also quite necessary. Add expense, click on show graph. You can see it has been applied to necessary. Okay, so this is how it is. You can see travel. And if we apply in, let's say, expense name, if I put in rent over here, and if I put in 200 value, or let's say 170, add expense and press on show graph, you can see now we have 3. We can apply in more. Let's apply another one. Let's say the next one is going to be, let's say, entertainment. And let's say I'm going to put in $50 and the category is entertainment. Add expense, press on show graph, and this is how it is going to look like. Now, if you want to save all of these files as CSV, that is also basically very simple. If you click on export to CSV, data has been exported to like expenses.csv. You can also save it up directly from here and save the figure inside any part of your file or any drive or anything. Let's say in this case, I'm going to keep one at desktop. I'm going to keep this figure 5, click on save, and this has been saved easily. Now, as you can see, we also exported it to CSV. So we can also close this off, and you can see on this side, we have the database file and we also have the CSV file. Okay. So this is basically how simple it is to create an expense tracker app. Now, obviously, there are a couple of things that you need to learn. Now, we already know about the libraries that we used, such as Tkinter, SQLite, CSV, Matplotlib, and Pandas. So first thing that we did is setting up the SQLite database. And this is the exact section that we used, the SQLite. It basically creates the database file, which is the expenses.db. It also creates a table of expenses if it doesn't already exist. The table has columns such as ID, name, amount, and categories. Then we apply in the function to add in the expenses and delete the expenses too, such as taking input from the user, such as these ones, like taking input from the users, then like name, amount, category to store it in the database and using an insert query. It also clears the input field after a successful entry. And that is why we use the 0 value of delete. Then we also use the function to export data to CSV. And that specific function is export to CSV. This basically retrieves all the expense records from the database, saves them in an expense.csv with a header row, and also message box confirms that it has been successfully been exported. Now, we also use the function to display expenses in a specific graph, which is basically this show graph. And this is how it is. It basically shows us that groups expenses by category and calculates the total spending per category. It also uses a bar chart to show expenses visually and displays a message if no data is available. And we also use the tkinter for creating the UI, which is basically the last section. This section basically creates the input field for names, amounts, and categories and uses pack to position the elements. We also used a specific button section for creating all the buttons that call, such as the TK button right over here. It adds the call such as add expense to save expenses, show graph to visualize spending, and export to CSV to export the data. And when we use this root.main loop, this starts the tkinter event loop and keeps the app running. So if we come to the conclusion, we have the database setup, we have the add expense to take user input and save it, we have export data to save expenses as CSV file, and we also have show graph to display a bar chart of spending, and the last one is tkinter UI to provide an interface for user interaction. So thank you for watching this video up till the very end, and hope you understood about everything in this class. If you still have any confusion or any question about any part of this lesson, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to help you out. Now, obviously, you will be able to implement a lot of functionalities to this specific application, but you just have to make sure to create a lot of these coding for more firmware. So thank you again. And if you have any question and complex files or any complex questions, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to help again. So without any further ado, let's move on to our next class of Python for mobile application development.